Now is the time to have a safety plan in place because it appears likely that a severe weather outbreak will unfold on Friday. But first, let's take a look at the satellite picture this morning and walk you through what's going to happen for tomorrow. There's actually two separate pieces of energy here. You have the southern mode down here in portions of Texas and Oklahoma, as well as you have the northern side of it as well. That is traversing across eastbound. Those two are going to be combined with the lift mechanisms. They're going to be the culprit of more severe storms, and unfortunately looks to be a severe weather outbreak, if not numerous tornadoes could unfold tomorrow. But there's also a cold side of the storm as well. This low pressure here over portions of Montana will be traversing eastbound as well towards the Dakotas and Minnesota, with more heavy snow for them. In fact, the Weather Prediction Center has already highlighted a powerful winter storm over portions of the central high plains on Friday, and that extends into the Great Lakes area on the day on Saturday. So it's a combination of very heavy snow rates, strong wind gusts could unfold to 50 miles per hour in portions of the Dakotas, unfolding blizzard-like conditions here into the Dakotas, as well as southwestern portions of Minnesota. And all these areas look to appear the probability of at least 4 inches of snowfall. And you've seen a lot of snow so far this season. And yes, definitely we're going to be adding to those totals. That's on the cold sector. But today, further south within those two areas of instability, we are going to have a little bit of a lift. They do have a conditional risk in play, meaning they do have a little bit of a strong capping inversion today that's going to be limiting some thunderstorm development. But anything that does get above the boundary layer could turn isolated severe, mainly north of the Highway 380 area in Texas towards the Red River, but especially as you head into Oklahoma, portions of Tulsa, those could be on the marginally severe side. And then that northern side of it as well, back into Sioux Falls, could also see some marginally induced stronger thunderstorms. But tomorrow is the big event because those two systems will be on the move and taking advantage of daytime heating. Things look to appear to get activated right around the late afternoon time frame, say around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You're going to have a southern branch break off in portions of far northeast Texas with isolated storm mode, could be some isolated discrete supercells, and having a tornado risk attached to them as well, some heavier wind gust. But once you get up towards the Arklatex, especially into this region towards northeastern Arkansas and western Tennessee, that's the first area of concern where the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted that marginal risk in play. And further north where the low pressure is, right along the triple point, that's going to be another bullseye area, if you will, towards portions of eastern Iowa and far northwestern portions of Illinois. So as these traverse across, we're going to be looking at all three modes of severe storms, definitely with the most favorite area for tornadoes were within these moderate risk zones. They already have a 10 and 15% hatched risk out. But yes, all three modes in a linear mode of 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts is definitely not out of the question. So let's highlight the tornado parameter. So in fact, the latest update from them on the afternoon update as upped and increased to a 15% probability right along the triple point here back into Des Moines. Does include portions of far northwestern portions of Illinois, and then that southern flank as well towards the Memphis area. That's the highest probability of seeing a potential strong EF2, EF3 type caliber storm. But things should start getting activated further south into further northeastern Texas, maybe towards the Tyler area, into the Longview area, but really start to get going into the evening time frame towards the Little Rock area, back into portions of Huntsville, but especially towards the Memphis area. That extends into Paducah. And these are should be two separate storm initiations, one further to the south and one to the north of this. And those could be those isolated severe discrete supercells and having the largest potential for that tornadic supercell, but further to the north has the highest potential to seeing some more elevated winds. Again, right along that triple point. I can't roll out. These areas in purple could exceed over 80-mile-per-hour wind gust. Definitely not out of the question with this severe storm mode. You can see this is a multi-state outbreak. It could include up to 9 different states with tornadic potential, some very high winds potential, easily accompanying 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, maybe at times, especially on this northern branch as we get deeper into the evening time frame. And as it moves through, eventually I think this might congeal into a squall line with a very strong damaging wind threat, as this will traverse across, heading towards Indiana, eventually heading towards the Ohio area, as well into portions of central Tennessee, into Kentucky, into the overnight time frame. But when we look at some of these updrafts, some of these helicity updrafts and some of these extensions, and you see these different colors kind of fingering out, that gives you the probability of something with these updrafts could be extended or have some sort of linear mode to it, traversing northeast. And these could be some potential tornadoes, if not maybe some long track tornadoes. Is definitely not out of the question. So the main areas of concern, it starts off the origination point down here in East Texas, extends into Arkansas, northwestern portions of Mississippi, especially into western Tennessee and western Kentucky and southern Illinois here. And then that northern side we have to be concerned about right there on eastern side of Iowa and the northwestern sides of Illinois. And they did, in fact, expand the enhanced risk to include all of Illinois now, as this will be traversing and move across into the Indiana area. But can't let your guard down if you even live in southern portions of Wisconsin, as well as into Michigan. You still have that updraft potential of even possibly seeing a tornado or two, even in your neck of the woods, well north. And this is kind of rare to see so kind of early on in the season, with these dew points rising all the way up into the low 60s, well up here, up here in the portions of Wisconsin. And the wind is going to be prevalent as too. So again, right in this area right here in the portions of Iowa, again in northwest portions of Illinois, could be seeing your strongest wind gusts. So all these areas in red easily could be over 60 miles an hour. So all these could be under all these severe thunderstorm warnings. Numerous are going to be unloading into the afternoon time frame, into the evening time frame. The main time frame I'm looking at is probably around between 5 and say midnight with this storm threat, as this will be moving across, accompanying all those states. But yeah, the tornadic potential as well. So here's the WRAP model, and this is very concerning. This model only goes up to 10, and some of these areas actually have it highlighted over an 8. So that's an 80% probability in some of these areas of including a tornado, if not a strong tornado. So this is a high impact event that essentially starts from East Texas and it goes all the way up into eastern portions of Iowa, as includes all of Illinois, even southern portions of Wisconsin, into Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, down into northwestern portions of Memphis, as well as into the Alabama area as well, through Friday afternoon, Friday evening time frame. So let's start the clock about 6 o'clock on the latest high resolution guidance. We should be looking at some isolated discrete supercell thunderstorms start to break out in far east Texas. These also could be discrete and could have some tornado or two potential within this sector. You'll probably have a tornado watch in play by then. Those move across all these areas of activity, these little renegades, very damaging high wind threat, definitely tornadoes within this sector. And then there's the northern side breaking out into eastern portions of Iowa and northwestern portions of Illinois, extending into Wisconsin, as well as into portions of Michigan. Then as we get into the 10 o'clock time frame, Again, these storms are going to be racing across, especially the northern branch could include 70-mile-per-hour movements on these storms. That we could be even looking at some isolated severe thunderstorm warnings moving at 80 miles an hour. These things are going to be booking it quick. You're going to have little to no warning. So the highlighted area is probably between 5 and 10 of maybe the most intense possible tornadoes that are coming out of this system. But once it tries to congeal into a squall line, then it becomes of a massive straight line damaging wind threat. And yes, you could be looking at some isolated pop-up tornadics, supercells within this banding as this moves across into Indiana, going more towards into central Kentucky, into western Tennessee, and then into the overnight time frame. These will be weakening into the wee hours of the mornings, but still have a linear mode to it, with a damaging wind threat and an isolated tornado threat as this extends deeper into portions of the southeast into the early morning time frame on your Saturday morning. And then just some isolated sporadic shower activity across the eastern seaboard. But once we get into that daytime heating, again, the heat of the afternoon, once it kind of reaches the coast, some of these could be bumped up again onto more of these marginally induced thunderstorms. Southeast Georgia, along the coast here, into Savannah, Charleston, into Wilmington here. And then there's also a northern branch of it too. That northern storm mode branch includes the Cleveland area. And we're talking places into Buffalo, into Pittsburgh. Could be looking at some severe storms. And it really highlights where the HRRR model is with those storm modes. So it kind of still separates those two storm modes going into Saturday morning with those highlighted threats reflecting on the high resolution guidance. But it doesn't end there, because this is a very active spring storm season. Back in Sunday, we have a little bit more instability. We get a little bit of heat up in the atmosphere. We have a little bit more lift. And yes, we have another severe possibility. This time it could include isolated areas of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, southern portions of Oklahoma, as well as the far northeastern portions of Texas here. That will be the afternoon hour on Sunday. That would be on Sunday, probably about a 30 to 50% chance down in that region. But then it really intensifies as it goes into next week. Another serious low pressure center highlights over the middle of the country. A powerful low level jet goes negatively tilted, and this has even more lift, serious lift associated with it. Almost looks like an eye on the 850. With very high winds coming in on the southern flank of it too. Again, we're going to be looking at all modes of severe weather. So another intense low pressure center. This one could be down in the 970 range with more heavy snow. So if you're looking at blizzard-like conditions going into Friday and Saturday into the Dakotas, we're going to get blizzard-like conditions again in those same areas on Tuesday, adding to those totals, adding to those impressive snow amounts that you've already seen. And then you're going to have the southern branch of that with, again, all three modes of severe storms, really, unfortunately, in a lot of the same areas. It's going to be including far northeast portions of Texas, where it is on that Friday threat. Does include the Little Rock area, back into the Memphis area, back into portions of Tulsa and the Springfield area, the Paducah, back into St. Louis, Kansas City, all the way to Des Moines, extending into northern Illinois. So this is almost kind of the same areas. And in fact, they already have an enhanced risk 5 days out, this far out. So a lot of ensemble guidance is hitting, especially with that deepening low pressure center. The negatively tilted trough spells more trouble with more widespread severe storms heading into that Tuesday timeframe. But here's the breakdown as far as the big picture goes, with the heavier snows extending into the mountain regions across the Pacific Northwest. We'll have the snows obviously reaching out with those two low pressure centers back into the Dakotas, coming out of Wyoming, but especially heading into Minnesota here, as well as in the higher winds. As these low pressure centers will be coming across, we'll have those higher winds extending, starting into portions of New Mexico. That extends into Kansas, Nebraska, all the way up into the Dakotas, where it transfers into more blizzard-like snow conditions for them. And then there's the severe storms, not just tomorrow, but in a lot of the same areas with that Tuesday risk going forward into next week. And then beyond that, we'll be looking at that low pressure center again, moving across to the east, weakening by then. We'll watch a fairly decent sized cold front for April standards as the snowstorm tries to wind down, but still leaving some heavier snows into portions of the Dakotas, back into Minnesota. This will be the day next Wednesday. So, but as we traverse across and get deeper into next week, there's going to be a boundary here. So you're going to have a cold front. It's going to be taking its sweet time, and you're going to have those overrunning conditions setting up some very heavy rain in a lot of these areas that will be across the deep south. And we could be looking at definitely some heavier rain. So you're going to have the temperature gradient fairly extreme, with the colder air continue to remain west and northwest of the U.S., where the southeast ridge is going to be prevalent. But where that cold front comes down, where that boundary is, we're going to be setting up a zone of very heavy rainfall by then. So this is on top of the severe storms. So here's the highlighted heavier rains that really start around the 6th, 7th, and 8th time frame for a good part of the southern plains. It includes portions of the Arklatex. Again, a lot of these same areas are going to get the severe storms, and with just heavy rain ending to that period. So a very active setup coming up, to say the least, over the next couple of days into the next week. But the snow is going to be prevalent too. I mean, this is end of March going into April, folks. This is a lot of snow is going to unfold with those powerful low pressure centers. So you thought winter was over. It's not even close to over up here in the northern branch, where they're going to get heavy feet of snows across the Intermountain West. And then once that traverses across the Dakotas, you got the storm today, you got the storm on Tuesday of next week, and then that ends with residual snows going into the middle of next week. All that combined could be looking at easily another foot to possibly 2 feet of snow in a good part of the Dakotas. Easily another foot coming for portions of central and northern portions of Minnesota, as well as in the northern portions of Wisconsin as well, over the next 7 to 10 days. And then here's the rainfall. So we're going to have those storms coming in off the West Coast, especially the northwestern regions, heavier rains. Most of this is going to be in the form of snow. And then once this moves across into the Dakotas, again, more heavy snow for them. But then you have that southern branch, the combination of both severe weather aspects and top of the heavier rains. But this area of the most rains are going to be falling over the next 7 to 10 days. And you could be all ending with flooding by the time we get into those 6th, 7th, and 8th time frame. So I appreciate you guys watching. I will be doing a morning update early tomorrow morning on this storm, and then I'll be going live coverage starting around 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon into the evening hour, covering this severe weather threat. So catch me in the next update while I protect you before and after the storm.